you can find some good stuff on the MLS, as I did early on. I found like a real old listing. The problem was whenever I bought it and then I was looking for my next deal, there weren't any more old listings for me to buy. It was kind of like, oh, I'll wait and see when something else comes. But if I wanted to buy a deal sooner, or I wanted more deals, or honestly, if I just wanted better deals as well, then I was going to have to find property owners that wanted speed and convenience and were willing to give a good price for it.
Welcome to the Real Estate and Financial Independence Podcast. My name is Chad Carson. You can also call me Coach. I'm your host for the show, which is all about investing in real estate, achieving financial independence, and doing more of what matters. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime listener, it's always great to have you here with me again today. It is late October here in Clemson, South Carolina in my recording studio, otherwise known as my home office, and beautiful weather. Been doing a lot of walking lately, walking the kids to school every morning, but also just walking in the neighborhood, doing a little outside exercise, making some campfires in the backyard. It's just that type of weather, late fall, and probably the most beautiful time of the year here in my hometown in South Carolina. Hope everything's going well where you are. The episode today is called The New Best Way to Find Off-Market Deals. And I'm going to take a deep dive with David Lecko, who's the CEO of Deal Machine. And I call this the new best way to find deals, off-market deals, because my favorite way, in case you didn't know, my favorite way to find properties, to find good deals on real estate investments has always been and still is to drive for dollars or walk for dollars. If you don't know what that means, we're going to go into more depth during the interview, but it's basically getting out in the neighborhoods where you're looking to buy and just looking for opportunities on the ground. It's the opposite of the, direct mail where you're mailing out thousands of letters and being very efficient. You're actually getting in the neighborhoods and just looking for them. And you can do this. You can hire other people to do it if you're trying to scale a little bit more. But the tool I'm talking about today is it's actually an app that I really wish I had. It's an app on your phone. You also use it on your computer to help with the driving for dollars process. It's basically driving for dollars or walking for dollars on steroids. Now, you don't have to use this app to be successful with it. I did it for many years using a piece of paper, driving around. So you can still do that today, but I'm really excited about it. And I'm actually an affiliate for Deal Machine and want to tell you more about it by telling you a story about the process that David, as a real estate investor, took to start investing in his early 20s. He was a software developer. He started saving some money on his own, got into house hacking like a lot of people do. But we talk about how he found his deals and how he's built a portfolio of now 9 rental properties plus his own house that he lives in, and how he used tools like Driving for Dollars and Deal Machine to help him get there. So that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Before we get started with today's interview, I'm going to start a new segment starting in this episode that I'm going to do each and every week that came from some feedback from all of you. That I have these episodes every week where I talk about how to do something, I interview other people, but I don't always talk as much about what's going on behind the scenes with me and with my real estate investing business. And so I thought I would start just sharing a little bit of a snippet every week about what's going on with me, what I'm working on currently in my real estate and my finances, perhaps something other topic business related, and then just share some of that with you so you can see a little bit more about what's going on with me. And this week in particular, actually, is part of what I've been doing with my business partner is selling a couple of our rental properties. So if you don't know kind of what our portfolio looks like, we have about 110 units, and some of those are multi-unit properties. We're in a small town, a college town called Clemson, South Carolina. And we're not doing anything wholesale. We're not selling all of our properties, but we always rank basically all of our properties from the best property we want to keep forever all the way to the properties that we were like, this is something we could sell. And there's various reasons for that. Sometimes the ones at the bottom of the list, they're just higher maintenance problems. Maybe they attract tenants who don't stay as long. Maybe there's just some other issues. For example, one of the properties we're looking at selling has a lot of trees around it, and that just dumps more leaves on the roof. There's more risk of it falling on the house. And even though you have insurance, it's just another hassle. And we've kind of gotten to the point now, we've been selling off properties here and there for years and then buying other ones to replace them, where most of the properties we have, I would either rank them as like an A or a B based on our criteria. The couple that we're thinking about selling are in the B- territory. There's a few things that have happened lately to kind of put them in the B- territory. We would probably be happy keeping them in the beginning if we had one of these properties, but we're going to sell a property. It's a good market to do that in right now. And part of our strategy financially is using some of the capital, some of the equity that we generate from that to pay off debt. So we're not actually going to buy another property with these unless something changes in the meantime, but we're going to sell the property, pay taxes on it, which would probably be, a capital gains tax these days be 20% plus maybe some surcharge fees. So 20% of the profit we'll pay taxes on. We'll have to recapture depreciation on anything we depreciated, but then we're going to use the revenue that these properties have appreciated a lot since we bought them and then pay off some debt on some other properties. So we're at this kind of stable point where we have enough revenue coming in, we have enough properties where we just want to reduce risk and stabilize things, increase income. And that's what's going on behind the scenes with me. There's obviously some other things going on as well, just the everyday maintenance and rental collection, but that's one of the details I'm working on, and I'd be happy to update you a little bit more as we go forward. Speaking of behind the scenes, if you want to regularly stay in touch with me behind the scenes, there are two great ways to do that. First, you can get my free email newsletter, which comes out each Monday and Friday. You can register for that at coachcarson.com/REI toolkit. New subscribers get my real estate investing toolkit, which includes helpful tools like my closing checklist, a deal worksheet, a tenant screening criteria checklist, and other goodies that will help you on your journey to financial independence. Again, you can get it for free at coachcarson.com/REI toolkit. The second way is that I teach online courses where you can interact with me and let me help you with your real estate investing. Some courses are available anytime on topics like creative financing, finding off-market deals, due diligence, and more. And then my premier course, Real Estate Deal School, is open each spring and each fall, and students go through live with me as I help you step by step to start purchasing investment properties. You can get details on all these courses at coachcarson.com/courses. Now let's get started with today's interview. Hey, David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today. And there's a couple of reasons I wanted to talk to you. One is I'm really excited about the product that you're the CEO of, Deal Machine. And we're going to get into that and talk about how this is a tool that I wish I had when I first started 18 years ago. It's just such a good deal finding app to help you find deals and drive for dollars. So I want to talk a lot about that. I also, though, I want to go and just let people know a little bit more about you, David. And I thought it'd be fun. I was reading another interview you did, and you talked about how your own real estate investing kind of experience started in your early 20s when you played the cash flow games. I wonder if maybe you could talk to me about that and kind of how that sparked your interest in investing in general.
Absolutely. So the cash flow game is part of the Rich Dad family of products and books. And I originally read the book. It was given to me by my high school band teacher, actually. And the next step after reading the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book was playing the cash flow game, which is an actual board game, but I played it online. They've got it free online now. And that taught me that I could get out of the rat race by continuing to build up my passive income. That seems to be the name of the game. Mm-hmm. But you're free to make all kinds of choices. So, for example, you could buy a house that did not cash flow. It would give you the option to buy a house that had negative cash flow. And I would play with some friends, and I was like, that's dumb. Why would you do that? But actually, a lot of people will buy the house with negative cash flow, and they'll kind of bank on appreciation. But sometimes in the game, it doesn't happen. It's just luck of the draw. So the one thing that game taught me was I need to buy properties that will cash flow. And you kind of don't realize there's other options until the game kind of presents it for you and you see other people make the move, and then you see what happens sometimes. So it's kind of a game of chance to bank on appreciation. But if it is bought for cash flow, then the appreciation, if it does happen, is just icing on the cake.
I think that's so cool. I've been a fan of, I've read Robert Kiyosaki, of course. I think a lot of people have, but I bought the cash flow game to start playing with my daughters who are now 8 and 10. And we started a couple years ago, and I was amazed at how much that game teaches just the principles without having to teach them, And so like you said, like my daughters were playing the game recently, and there's some kind of investment came up, and it was like a CD, I think. So you could buy a CD in the bank, and it was like 2%. And my daughter was kind of confused about it. She read this card. She's like, why would anybody do that? I was like, exactly. Like you're exactly right. So it was a good teaching moment. But yeah, so in your case though, if I remember right, you were working, your background's in software, you live in Indianapolis. And so you were working with a startup as an employee, and you read this book and you got interested. The cash flow game taught you that, hey, this rental property seemed to be the way to go. So did you do anything with it at that point? Like where did you go from there?
Yeah, the next thing I did was I went to my local, I think I actually may have called the Rich Dad advisors or the coach program that they had. Didn't end up going that route. I went to a real estate meetup. Funny enough, they had a contest and I won an iPad. It was like their Christmas giveaway. And I was like, this has to be a sign. I've got to, I've got to go. So I think I sold the iPad for a couple $100 and then use that to help fuel I did driving for dollars next and to fuel that project. So I ended up getting my first rental property probably 6 months or so after that. And what I realized was I was renting at the time and I was looking for a rental property. I didn't find one driving for dollars at first, but I ended up just buying a property of my own and house hacking. That was like my intermediate step, when I was struggling with the analysis paralysis. I was like, why don't I just get my own property and rent out some bedrooms? So that was my next step for me.
So let's talk about a couple terms. I know a lot of people are already familiar with driving for dollars and house hacking, but some people might be new. So let's go. This is a good important topic with Deal Machine as well. Like, talk to me about driving for dollars, what that is. It's always been one of my favorite ways of finding deals. But man, I want to hear from you. Kind of what is this strategy?
Yeah. So at the real estate meetup, I was asking for advice, and people said that I should drive for dollars, which means that you look for rundown properties that need fixing up, and you look up who owns those properties, and then you get in touch with them via mail, was what they said. So if you do that 200-300 times, it's likely that somebody's going to respond and say, yeah, I want to sell my house, and that's going to be for a price that would make sense for an investor to pay for. So I remember looking around at all the stuff that was available on the MLS, and when I did my analysis, it just wasn't going to cash flow. And so that's why I went driving for dollars, because I was trying to find a deal where I could add value then by fixing it up and still then have a cash flowing rental property afterwards.
Yeah, and that's, of course, very relevant today, 2021, what a very competitive market. So people are having to go off market to find deals. There's still a few deals here and there on the MLS, depending on where you are, but you've got to get off market to find the best deals. And so you got good advice. You went to a meetup, somebody said, do that. You ran with that advice. And I think it's so cool because so many people I interview, whether they get into other types of real estate or don't even do real estate, house hacking always seems to be the place to start. And so tell me a little bit about where you were in your life at that point. And you made that decision to buy a house. And I assume you got some roommates and let them rent out rooms. Like, talk to me about that situation.
Yeah, I did. So I was following the driving for dollars advice. But then I imagined myself finding that rundown house, and I was getting anxiety about, I don't know how to close. I've never closed this deal, And so I was like, well, why don't I just change my own situation? Why don't I buy a house through a lower pressure way, which is something that is on the market? I ended up finding a listing that was like 200 days old. So we got a better price than what was typically out there for sale on the market. And it was like 2,000 square feet with 5 bedrooms, because they had finished out the basement into just more bedrooms. And so I was like, well, this is perfect. Yeah. So, I picked it up for like $189,000. And I had some coworkers that were also my age at work. And so I invited 2 of them to come and move in for $500 per bedroom, I believe. And then one of them brought a significant other. So then that was like an additional fee, but not a full $500. And then we did fill out one of the other rooms for $500. So I was bringing in, I guess, like $1,700, because the significant other was for a discount since they were both in the same room. And then I think my mortgage at the time was like $1,300.
Beautiful.
So I got a bit extra every month. I did put, I was on the hook for the utilities, right? So, but it was still positive after paying for the mortgage and the utilities. And I had a little bit left over extra for groceries.
So you're in your early 20s, you're working in software or startups, and here you are saving all this money. Like, is this the normal thing that all your friends are doing? Like, because this is not really, this is a little bit weird, right? To be renting out bedrooms, saving all your money. Like, what was the thinking there for you?
Well, it even goes back further than that. I had this idea that I wanted to kind of control my own destiny. I wanted the flexibility to like do what I want. And I had internships 3 years during college, and I saved 50% of all of those dollars. Just tried to aggressively save. And I tried to keep that up too through my first job out of college and then into my 20s, that I tried to save 50% of everything, because my impression was that just time was your biggest asset. And as long as you can save as much as you can early on, that would compound over, into your 30s and 40s and allow you to retire. So I was always very interested in managing money for myself. And I was trying to be as aggressive as possible with that saving. So that was not what my friends were doing at the time. Actually, I remember I had a few friends that would say, well, you're going to die anyway, so why are you saving all that money? But my voice was like, hey, if I can save all this money now, it's going to be big enough so I've got a lot of freedom before I die. So, we definitely had some different pictures about money, and I didn't take as many trips. If they were going on a fun trip, I would only go on like maybe one out of every three. And I definitely lived a really restrictive life early on. Made it very difficult for dating as well. Because, how do you date when you've got 4 roommates and no budget? Pretty challenging.
Yep.
But yeah, I would definitely say it was a sacrifice I did not see a lot of other of my friends making at the time.
Yeah. And so you're saving money. You kind of have this vision of, and I resonate with that because, in my early 20s, I was doing the same thing. I lived at home for a while. Then I went to a spare bedroom of my business partner, a real estate business partner, who we still work together now. I don't live in his house anymore, but that was only a year. And then I got my house hack where I lived in one unit and rented out the other unit. So like it makes, no matter what your life situation is, it makes so much sense to take care of your housing because that's your number one expense. It's so big. But then I just think it's so smart to save money in your 20s. And my kind of perspective on that was I just went to college where people like already room with people and already don't spend that much money because nobody has any money. So like, why not just extend that a little bit farther? And I always found it creative to like, how can we have fun? How can I enjoy my life without spending a bunch of money? Because like, to me, the assumption everybody makes is, oh, you've got to spend money to have fun. And I can think of a ton of things. Like I can go on hikes, I can pick up basketball. I can take trips that don't cost as much, a road trip across the country and you go to national parks. So anyway, I guess it's just, I'm confirming what you did, but also saying, hey, this can be fun. And you now, how old are you now, David?
32.
So you're 32 and, you look 10, 12 years later and you have a business, which you've obviously invested a lot of money in, has done really well. But talk to me about, if you don't mind, about your real estate portfolio. You invested money in that. Like, do you have properties now? Like what does that look like?
I do. Yeah. So, got 8, I guess nine rental properties. And, then the 10th is the house that I live in. So I did continue driving for dollars after I set up that house hack. And I think it may have been like 3 months later that I actually got my first deal. And it was driving for dollars, and ended up getting the house 2 down from it as well. But it started out, I saw this house. It was a ranch. It was yellow peeling paint. The gutters were really bent off. I sent a postcard, and on the 6th or 7th one is when I got a call back. I was sending it every 3 or 4 weeks. And it was a guy who said his parents had passed away and he needed to settle debts in their estate within 30 days. So he got my postcard and he wanted to know if I wanted to buy his property. So I came to the house, was overwhelmed with how much it was nasty. like it just had sat for a really long time. I think that one of his parents had gone into assisted living or somewhere else for a while, and the house had just sat vacant and, sprung a leak here and there. And so we ended up doing the deal for $45,000. And I originally had it for $55,000. But then during my few days that I left for my own personal inspections and when I get contractors in there to kind of estimate things out, I discovered that they had smoked heavily in the house. And so it was actually going to require either removing all the drywall or buying like a very special high grade commercial like coating to like make sure none of that smell comes back through. And so I remember, it was coming down to the wire for doing the deal, and I kind of had to renegotiate and say, look, I really want to do this deal. The expenses are coming back higher because of this reason. So if we're going to do it, we've got to do it at 45,000 instead. And I think he took a day and then he accepted it. And then, purchased it, fixed it up, and I've had a tenant in ever since. Just had the tenant move out and turn over, and somebody else is in there now. And believe that the value of the property is worth like 190, I think, today. And I had put about 70,000 into it, so it was a great, BRRR deal, which is I think buy, renovate, rent, refinance, right?
And repeat.
That's exactly what we did with it.
How did you come up with the money in the first place on that one, David? Because that's always a challenge for people on their first deals, figuring out how to get the money.
Yeah, so great question. And I had just actually quit my job, funny enough. So I couldn't even get the loan myself because I just quit the job to work on Deal Machine full time. And I can talk about that. But if you don't have that W-2 income, that you can't get a loan either for the refinance part. And so I had a friend who lived in Chicago, and I've known him for years. He was working a job in finance. He really liked what I did with my house hack. And because I had shared that with him, and he was like, well, I'd really love to do a rental property myself in Indiana. And so I reached out to him, and we actually purchased the property tenants in common, which means we both own the property with our own names, kind of 50-50 split. Except he provided all the capital because, he had that W-2 job and he had that saved up. And then I provided the finding the deal in the first place. And then I also managed the project. I think he had also used his name to get like a loan from SoFi. They'll do like up to $100,000 if you've got like a decent W-2 job. I recall, I think that's what we did for that one. And then once the project was complete, we then refinanced it in his name. So we both owned the property, but he put the mortgage in his name. And so we did a few more properties like that together. And then I had 2 years of business history, and then he had quit his job to go do something entrepreneurial. So then I kind of repaid the favor, and then I did a few more properties, but co-owners, but loan was just in my name. So if you could find a partner, that worked out really well for me to get the financing.
Yeah, that's so smart. And it's just really the idea of what you have somebody else, or what you don't have somebody else might have. And so if you can find somebody you trust and to work with. And I did the same thing on my first deal. I had a professor at Clemson that I had talked to as a business professor, and I had no job. I never had a job. I just graduated from college, and my business partner had a startup internet business. So you can appreciate that. Like back in 2003 or whatever it was, like nobody really cared about internet businesses at that point. So we had to go, he put his name on a loan, and then we partnered on the deal. So yeah, there's those first couple of deals, you just got to get the deal done. You just don't worry about taking all the deal and getting greedy. Like just get the deal done. I love that you did that. And so you've fast forward, you've got now today, including your house, 10 properties. Was it kind of like the cash flow game for you? Were you just looking at it and say, I just want to make a certain amount, I'm making good income in my job eventually. We'll talk about that. But was it just kind of the long-term financial independence plan was to have that income coming in from your rental properties?
Yeah, it was getting properties that I knew were going to cash flow. And I had on the back of the napkin, the 1% rule, which says if you pay $100,000 for the house, you're going to want to see $1,000 per month come in as rent. And so that was my napkin math to figure out, if these were going to be good cash flowing deals, and try to follow that as closely as possible.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, cool. So I want to transition. So one thing you mentioned in passing was you started doing driving for dollars. And I remember I've heard your story before, that you were looking for deals. You were kind of working your job at the same time. And I want to tell you a story, and then you can tell your own story about this too. Like when I first started investing, driving for dollars has always been my favorite strategy. Like I've started other things. I've done a ton of direct mail. I've done radio ads. I've done signs. I've done all sorts of stuff. I don't do as much of that anymore because I'm kind of got enough of what I need. But driving for dollars is always something I've done. But when I really ramped it up early in my career, I went out and I would drive for dollars all the time. I would have a little spreadsheet on a piece of paper that I would write down all the addresses, and I kept really organized. Like I had folders, but it was totally analog. And then when I scaled it, one time when I was really trying to buy a lot of properties in 2007, I started what we call like a bird dog system, like a farm system, where I just put ads it was equivalent of Craigslist and a little penny thrifter paper saying, if you have a car and a camera, and this is a Polaroid camera. I asked if they had a Polaroid camera at that point. Then I'll pay you. You can make some money on the side. And so I had like several people got in touch with me. And I had these two guys who were super motivated. And I remember I gave them a territory in Anderson, South Carolina, because I didn't want everybody on top of each other. And they came back with 200. What my deal was, if they brought me this piece of paper filled out, they took a picture of the front and also the back of the property, which is a little aggressive. I probably shouldn't have done that. But then if they stapled those pictures to this piece of paper with an address on it, every 10 properties they brought me, I'd pay $10 per lead. So I'd pay them $100 for 10 of them. And these guys came back with 200, like 200 in like a month or two. And I was like, a little overwhelmed, but also like, okay, this is cool. And I paid the guys $2,000, and I went through those leads and ended up buying, I think, 5 or 6 deals. I probably could have done better, but I made 5 or 6. A couple of them were flips, a couple of them were wholesales. One was a rental property. So that's my story of driving for dollars and also building a farm team, completely analog. And when I heard about Deal Machine, which is the company you started, and you also started kind of out of necessity because you're doing something similar to me with a piece of paper and all that. I wish I had a better solution. So I want to hear kind of what was going through your mind whenever you started driving for dollars, and how that sparked the idea of this app that's become Deal Machine today.
Wow, I was really taken aback by the Polaroids. I mean, that's because they can just pull it out and write the address right there.
Yeah.
But then the back too, that is pretty aggressive.
Yeah. They were vacant houses. So I was like, I think I just heard that in a seminar or something, like you should take a picture of the back too. Cause I would make offers over the phone often. I would say,
that'd be really helpful.
But in any case, that was my little system. But having a smartphone, like this is dating myself, right? That was 2006 and 2007 when I really did a lot of that. It's not that long ago, but things have changed a lot in the technology world and in the real estate world too. And you were kind of the beginning of some of that. So your experience was probably similar, that you were doing some analog stuff, but where did you take it from there?
Well, what I was doing was very similar to you. I was doing it myself. I hadn't hired anyone. I was driving around looking for properties. I was taking a photo with my smartphone, but I was writing down the address on a piece of paper. It definitely was a piece of paper. And I had got 50 properties or so. I'd been doing it for 3 or 4 weeks. And one of the challenges was I thought it would be easy to match up the address I put on paper with the picture I had taken on my phone, but it just wasn't. I mean, that was so difficult. I couldn't end up using the photo like I wanted to, because I had seen online that you'll get the best response if you show like an actual picture of the home. It's going to catch their eye. They're going to open that envelope or look at that postcard. And plus, then a lot of the feedback I got from the calls was like, oh, I get a lot of these letters, but it looks like you took a lot of time. I could tell you were actually here because you took this picture of my house. So that was what I was trying to do. I realized that I had missed out on a deal about 3 or 4 weeks into this when I drove by the same property I'd already written down. And then there was construction happening. And I was like, man, I think I just wrote this property down a few weeks ago. Funny that it's now being worked on. So I did go home and I looked it up, and somebody had just bought it. And I felt that I missed out on that deal because I wasn't following through with my outreach fast enough, because it was kind of a pain, like I said, to match up the address with the photo. So I was just putting it off till later and working on just building up my list. But I came away from that experience feeling that I needed to send the postcard immediately. As soon as I see one of those properties, I need to get that letter or postcard out immediately. And so that's when I set out as a software developer, just to build like this real basic thing. What I needed was a Google map that I could touch, and it would sync with the county records. So the first iteration was I had, when I touched it, it would not get the address right away. It would create a task though for like a virtual assistant to go look it up on our county website. Once they input the information on my custom app, then it would send a postcard. And I also had a button that would let it repeat every 21 days. So I was handling my follow through problem. And that's how it all started. It was just on my phone. Like, it looked like crap, and it was impossible for anyone else to get an account because it was just on my phone. You can plug in your iPhone to your developer computer, and just put it on there for testing. That's how it started.
But it solves such a big problem. And I'm thinking about two problems that I was very aware of, and I was pretty self-disciplined to follow up on this, but it was still a problem for me. Was that, number one, the timing, the gap in timing, like you said. If it takes you a week or two to send those letters out, somebody else might buy the deal in the meantime, or you might forget about it, or life might happen, right? That's a big deal. And then the other thing is just, I'm just finding repeatedly, and I know a lot of listeners are going to resonate with this too, is that time is such a difficult thing to manage when you're doing this. You have a full-time job, you're doing this real estate thing on the side. Like, if you just don't do it right now, like, it's not going to happen. Like, you might only have 2 or 3 hours a week to work on this. And so I just, that's brilliant. Like, to be, even the first iteration of what you're doing, if you can press a button in front of the house and all of a sudden there's some things behind the scenes that go to sending them a postcard, like that is like 10 times, 100 times better from a behavioral standpoint, from a time management standpoint. I mean, I can just see this huge leap just that step alone took.
It was a big step for me, because even though I knew I should be sending those postcards out and writing those letters, just you name it, there's an excuse why I didn't do it. Because I came home from driving and working, and then I was like ready to eat dinner, and then it was bedtime. Or maybe I wanted to just chill, and watch TV. I didn't have time to put the postcards together. So it was a big shift for me, like you said, to know that it was handled as soon as I was in front of the house.
Yeah. So you did it yourself, like you started working, like, so what,
yeah.
Did you have some friends who were like, hey, like, that's pretty cool. Like, did you start telling the story and they wanted to do it too?
Yeah. I mean, there's two people in mind, like Align and Brittany Wicks. These were two people that I had just kind of got to know from coming back to that real estate meetup a couple of times. And I showed them, and they were like, oh, that's really cool. I'd love to try it out. Brittany Wicks, she was actually buying homes for a turnkey provider. And she said something that was life-changing for me. She said, I'll spend $1,000 to try any new type of marketing. And I was like, holy crap, I have to figure out how to get this on her phone. I'm going to make $1,000, somehow. So then I quickly had to figure out, it was a free app at first. And I think I decided, hey, the time it saves you is worth like $1, per house. So it was like $2 per postcard originally. And I think I gave her a discount. She bought like $750 worth of mail, and I had to figure out how to accept a payment, And so, yeah, I put it on the App Store to get it on her phone and Alline's phone, my other buddy. And then I figured out, okay, I can load up, credits for her postcards. And I had set up like a merchant account, and she had bought it. And that was when I realized that I should probably focus on making this like a little bit better, because I never sold anything in my life, but it seemed like there was a real need there. It wasn't like I have this business idea and I'm trying to pitch it. It was just like, oh, I just showed her what I did, and she was like, I want to buy that, So that's when I realized that a little bit more effort on the app would probably be helpful. And that's when I put it on the App Store for the first time.
Seems like that's a lesson. This is a real estate lesson, a business lesson in general. If you can start with your end customer, like you were the end customer, so you built an app for yourself. And then the second iteration was you have some friends that you can just quickly market it to. And you're basically testing concept, right? You're putting it out there to the world. And if somebody's willing to pay you money before you do all of the work up front, like now you got something like that. So many people try to build something first, whether it's buy the property before they understand the customer or do something completely on spec or any business, you might have been thinking about that. Maybe you weren't, but that was a pretty brilliant move just to start with the end customer and make sure they pay you first.
Yeah, I mean, it just worked out well that way. And then what we realized was $2 per postcard is way too expensive. Mm-hmm. And so over time, we worked to get that down to just the rock bottom, price possible. And instead, so we could continue investing in the app, we then implemented a monthly fee that people were a lot happier with because they would feel free to send all the postcards that they needed to, rather than trying to restrict how many postcards they would send at that higher price. So that's how the app exists today, is like a monthly fee that starts at $59, and then the postcards, I believe, are 50 cents.
Got it. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the app today. So I wanted to start with why that's a need. So like driving for dollars, core marketing strategy. So let's take a step back here. So like a lot of my audience, people are listening to this. There's people who are brand new beginners who've never bought a property. There's other people who've bought a few properties already, but they've realized now that, okay, I got kind of lucky in the first one. I bought that off the MLS. But wherever they are, they're now realizing that like finding deals is probably the most difficult part of the real estate business. And so I guess maybe we could talk about how Deal Machine is structured to help people with that problem. Like, so maybe just kind of give me like a more holistic view of Deal Machine and how it's helping those investors who are trying to find deals.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can find some good stuff on the MLS, as I did early on. I found like a real old listing. The problem was whenever I bought it and then I was looking for my next deal, there weren't any more old listings for me to buy. It was kind of like, I'll wait and see when something else comes. But if I wanted to buy a deal sooner, or I wanted more deals, or honestly, if I just wanted better deals as well, then I was going to have to find property owners that wanted speed and convenience and were willing to give a good price for it. So, I had to go seek them out. I had to go look for those properties, get in touch with them directly, and to be able to get the very best deals. As I learned, from like Brittany Wicks, like I said, she was buying, trying to buy 30 properties per month. They would go to auctions, they would do direct mail. And what I learned was they got their very best deals from driving for dollars. And also they spent a lot less on marketing when they were using the driving for dollars list compared to just buying a list and totally blanketing that list with mail. And so the numbers that I've come to see be true in general is if you say are buying a list of absentee owners who are this certain demographic, you name it, you typically want to send mail 3-4 times at a minimum to get a deal from that, and you typically would need 1,000, 2,000 properties on that list in order to pop a deal off. And the reason why, from what I understand, is those lists are pretty easy to buy and a lot of people buy them and a lot of people send the mail. So the chance that your postcard is the one that gets called back is actually lower just because there's a lot of postcards that they are calling. But if you drive for dollars, then you may end up only needing to mail a list of 200, 300, 400 properties. So your cost for mail goes way down because your number of properties goes way down. It's not an easy list to get. A lot of people just aren't willing. They'd rather just buy the list, right, than go find and make the list themselves. But for that reason, because it's a bit harder, less people do it. and those people receive less postcards. So you're the one that gets called back more frequently on the Driving for Dollars list. And so that's Deal Machine's mission from the beginning was to make that easier, that process easier for you if you were going to go make your own list driving for dollars, either yourself or through hiring one or two other people and wanting to make sure they're going in the right places. Deal Machine is a tool that helps make that easier. And then we've paired that with the direct mail that you might want to do, or the skip tracing that you might want to do to get the phone number. That's how Deal Machine started.
So it's evolved from still the core is driving for dollars. And so you have this tool where if I'm personally, like I'm the single investor, I go out for 2 hours on the weekend, 4 hours on the weekend, I'll drive around my target neighborhoods. And let's say I find 15 houses during a 2 hour period. I'll press the app, I'll press that house on the app. I'll have some setup behind the scenes to say, when I press this button, it goes and it puts them on a list, and there's a mail campaign behind and so as soon as I press that button, it puts them on the mail list, and they're going to start sending mail. So like that Saturday morning for 2 to 4 hours, I find 15 or 20 properties. I've now started mailing them. There's nothing else to do. I get home, I'm done. I can just kind of go on with my day, and I've done some productive work during those 2 to 4 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so people who are new to marketing, I just want to explain this step too. So that the idea here is that you've identified these properties that are in your target location. We don't know if these people want to sell their houses or not, but we're increasing the likelihood because it's a fixer-upper house. Maybe it's vacant. Have you found a smart target types of properties to look for? Are there any kind of tips you have when people are out driving for dollars? What kinds of things they should be looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I stay away from the houses that are in neighborhoods that are like all really, really bad, because if I can't fix it up and it be valuable, that's not going to be a good property. So first and foremost, there are just some neighborhoods in Indianapolis that even if it was in perfect condition, the house wouldn't be worth more than $10,000, $20,000 just because of that area, so I stay away from that. But what I prefer to look for is like a 1,500 square foot ranch that was maybe built in the 70s and looks like it hasn't been updated. So even if it's not totally run down, if it looks like it just hasn't been updated in that amount of time, I'll add it to my list. And other things would be, does something funny look about that house compared to the rest of the neighborhood? And it might be like, oh, they haven't trimmed their bushes, or they have like grass growing up through their bushes, or maybe a little bit of paint is peeling, or maybe, like I said, it could be as obvious as like a big hole in the gutter or the roof. Or if the mail looks like it's backed up in the mailbox and that's totally full. So those are some key things I look for. And when it's snowy, if it's been snowy for a couple of days and you go out driving, if nobody's driven on those drivways, you'll be able to tell. So I would definitely add that type of property too, because it means that person, nobody's living in that house likely. So those are some of the telltale signs. There's specific things, but also you can just be as general as like, some look a little off compared to the rest of these properties on the street.
Yeah, and it's smart to be a little more aggressive, because at 50 cents per mailer, if you send 4 mailers, that's $2. So it's like, okay, why not add that to your list, right? The biggest cost is your time out there, and you have this app that's working for you. Like, so every incremental letter you send is really not that big of a cost, right?
Yeah, and I will say too that I hear some people say they only target absentee-owned properties when they're driving for dollars. And I think the reason is because when people are giving advice on buying lists, frequently they say, hey, target these absentee owners. But most of the driving for dollars deals that I've actually done, and the best ones, have been owner occupied. So I don't pay any attention to if it's absentee owned or owner occupied, because the app will tell you. But I add both. The only thing I'm looking for is if that house looks a little bit different or a little bit run down. Right. And I've had great success, especially with the owner occupied ones.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. I've bought a lot of owner occupied as well. And the other thing is sometimes we as investors overthink this with analytics. Like sometimes the data at the courthouse is not right. Like, so even though you have the best, most up-to-date data from the courthouse, I'm thinking of an example in my neighborhood, because I just know everybody in my neighborhood and I'm always walking around. There's a vacant house across the street from me where I live the owner is in like a retirement home, or, I think it might be memory care at this point. Her family member comes once or twice, every couple months to take care of the property, but that is a vacant house. I'm not trying to buy this one, although I've kind of talked just informally, but that would be, if you're driving for dollars, that one's owner occupied on the tax records. That's my main point there. And you would be missing out if you tried to, and that's an opportunity. Like if you mail to that one over the next 6 to 12 months, they might be ready to sell it. So I think that's really smart.
It's funny you mentioned the retirement home, because another thing that I look for too is a handicap ramp, especially if the handicap ramp looks like it's been there a while.
Yeah.
Because, that probably means then the person, it doesn't always mean, but could be an indicator that they were aging and that they now have moved on, or they may be moving on soon to an assisted living place and need to sell their house. Another one was like window AC units that I found some success with. Around here in Indianapolis, central AC is the standard. So if you see window AC units, it means, hey, their AC is not working, or they don't have one, which would mean the house is pretty outdated. So those are two things I also look for that aren't obvious if you haven't driven for dollars before.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all good. And I'll add a couple more just from my experiences, that you'll get a radar for noticing like window treatments. So a lot of the times, if it's a vacant house, if somebody lives there, they're going to have curtains, or they're going to have some kind of blinds, and they're typically going to have the blinds down. But if you can you'll just start noticing, if you can sort of see through the house, like you drive by and like, oh wait, I can see it. Like there's no furniture in that house. Or if you look in the garage and there's just like totally empty in the garage, those are some signs that I've seen. Just, people have stuff, like, so when a house is lived in, there's going to be stuff there. And if it's vacant, like a lot of times you'll find houses that somebody's between rentals, or maybe somebody has inherited a house and is sitting vacant. But the point here is there's all sorts of reasons. You don't even need to know the reason why. But if you can find a property that does need some love, tender love and care because of repairs, if it's just outdated, if it's vacant. I used to always put for sale by owners, for rent by owners on my list too, just because those are opportunity. And I would actually call them. So I wouldn't, like, if it's a for rent by owner and there's signs in the yard, just call them. Don't wait. You've got phone numbers there. And for sale by owners, same way. And then I'm not sure if y'all, maybe you could talk to me about the app and how this could help with that. But what I do also when I'm coaching people to do driving for dollars is that if you want to be really to the point and get the deals even faster, like stop. If it's a vacant house, park your car, get out and try to talk to people. And so I would talk to the neighbors often, especially if it's a real good looking neighborhood that I really liked.
Yeah.
People are in their yards, they're cutting the grass. And if you have a nice approach, non-threatening approach, don't go right up to them. The neighbors know a lot about the property. And so my pitch might be, hey, I'm looking to buy a property in this neighborhood. I really love the street. This one looked like nobody was living there. I'm interested in buying it. Do you know who the owner is, or how I might be able to get in touch with them?
Yeah, that's a great way to go about it.
Super simple.
I've also noticed that if you roll down your window and you stick your phone out and take the picture that way, then the neighbors will probably see that and they'll be like, hey, why are you taking a picture of this house? And I always encourage people to be like extremely intentional when they're taking the picture. Don't like try to sneak a photo. Be very intentional with like, hey, I'm taking this picture of this house. Then somebody will ask you, and then you can say, I'm looking to buy a few properties. I was curious about this one in particular, and they will tell you about it. Like I've never had nobody not tell me about it. As soon as I explain what I'm doing there, they're very free with information. They'll probably tell you more than you even want to know about the neighborhood in general.
Yeah.
But that's talking to the neighbors has been helpful.
Yeah. And I one of my first teachers that I learned from was a guy named John Schaub down in Sarasota, Florida. Has been investing for 50 years. And when I went to a seminar with him down in Sarasota, or actually it was in Atlanta when he taught it. And part of the exercise at this 2-day seminar was us going out and walking for dollars in a neighborhood, actually walking, and we walk around and talk to people. And we would come back on Sunday morning and everybody would have a list of people we talked to and we would then follow up and call properties and talk about the numbers. And it's just amazing if you've never gotten out and behind your computer. I find like the best part about this Deal Machine app to me is getting people out in neighborhoods instead of just sitting behind your computer, making everything kind of so remote. Because when you get into neighborhoods, you're going to learn so much about the neighborhood. You're going to talk to people. And the point is you're going to get deals that nobody else knows about. And you're going to
Yeah.
do it by being yourself, by being, how are you going to compete with, iBuyers and all these other like kind of high tech companies? By doing the exact opposite that they do and do something that's like unscalable. Like this is, I mean, you're the closest that people can be to scaling driving for dollars. But for all of us who are like small investors, they can't replace your personality and you talking to a neighbor and being a decent person and just having a conversation. Like that is not replaceable. Like there's no robot that's going to do that. And I find that really encouraging for the small investors.
Yeah, I've heard that too many times and experienced it one time with myself where the seller would say, I've gotten a higher offer, but I'm going to go with you because I appreciate the way I know you. I appreciate the way that you've been so personal with me, or I like you better. And people definitely make decisions based on, the interaction that they have with you that they can't get from the iBuyer, just like you said.
Yeah. So I want to keep going with this tool, but so like we spent a lot of time though on the driving for dollars, look what you look for, how you find it. There's a big opportunity there. The second step though is that you're going to start reaching out to people, whether you're talking to them on the phone, and the Deal Machine app helps you do that, whether it's direct mail. You also have another plugin or a capability to be able to do like what's called a skip trace, right? Where you can call people and get their phone numbers. Maybe
Right.
Could you talk just in general about that follow-up step? So whether it's direct mail or whether it's calling somebody, like what's the message or how am I communicating with somebody who's just getting this mail or this call out of the blue from me about their property? Like what am I asking them or telling them?
Yeah, I mean, it can be intimidating if you haven't made that call before, but it actually can be quite simple. And if you're in front of their house, you've added them to Deal Machine, you've pressed the skip trace button, which now will show you their cell phone, and you call it and they say hello, then what I would say is, hey, I'm, a real estate investor. I'm standing right in front of your property at, 321 Main Street. Do you own the property? And they'll say yes or no. And if they say yes, you could just say, I was just wondering if you were interested in receiving an offer on the property. And it can be as simple as that. And they'll let you know if they have any type of thought about if they were going to sell it.
Yeah. So just keep it simple. Are you the introduce yourself, ask a question, and then the question is a yes or no question. Would you want to receive an offer? Or I might even say, would you consider selling? Are you considering selling the house? Something like that, just to find out what their motivation is. Got it. And so just to tell people who haven't done a lot of marketing, out of 10 calls you make, what's a success rate? How successful, what's a good success rate? And so we can understand and be realistic about, the other answers we might get.
Yeah. I mean, 1 out of 10 calls might lead somewhere else. I would say 9 out of 10 calls aren't going to be interested, or they're not going to answer. So it's a numbers game. And you've got to make sure you understand how many calls you probably need to make, or how many pieces of mail that you probably need to send before you get started. That way you don't get discouraged and quit too soon.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, whether it's direct mail, whether it's calling, you're going to get no's. And in fact, and just another disclaimer, you're going to get some angry calls every once in a while. Like I always knew when I sent my direct mail, there's going to be some people who call me angry saying, hey, why are you sending me this letter? The answer is, I was interested in your property. I'm happy to take you off the list, though. Thank you for calling.
Yeah.
Next, you move on.
Yeah, I will say, as an owner of several rental properties, I get put on these lists all the time. So I get a lot of texts from investors. I get a lot of calls from investors, and almost zero of them are from a native English speaking person. So if you're going to make calls, just know you're already going to stand out if you're the one like making that call yourself.
So people are hiring VAs in the Philippines or somewhere else, or somewhere else to make the calls. That's what's happening?
Those are the calls that I receive. Yeah. So if you're just yourself, I think that'll go a long way.
Yeah, love it. Okay, cool. There's a lot more we could talk about, but the steps are: use the Deal Machine app to find driving for dollars, find properties. You reach out to them either through direct mail or through a phone call. And the direct mail, just to kind of talk about behind the scenes how that works, you have a service that ahead of time, the person who owns Deal Machine or signs up for Deal Machine would put their copy in there. So they could put in there, "Hi, my name's Chad. I'm interested in buying your property. So you have some templates that people can copy or use. Or so how does that step of messaging work within the direct mail?
Yeah. So there's like 10 templates inside of Deal Machine when you first create an account. And then it randomizes which one is your default. And it does that so that way you don't look like the person who's also using Deal Machine in your market. You don't have to do anything, but you can also go all the way. You could customize them with your own. I mean, it has kind of like a built-in like Canva app or Photoshop app where you can totally design that the way that thing looks and the copy, or you can just use one of the 10 templates that's already there and proven to work. And they're all simple messages like we talked about. You'd say on the phone is like, "Hey, are you the owner of this property? Would you be interested in selling? I can close quickly. Have a great day." And then it's got your phone number. So that's the message that's on there by default on most of the postcards. And you're definitely free to change that up if you want, all the way to changing the whole design.
Cool. And then is there an ability to do like different types of letters? So I know you mentioned postcards. Can you do direct mail kind of letters that people open up an envelope, do something different?
Yeah. So we do have a ballpoint pen written letter option, and it's actually like a machine that holds a ballpoint pen and writes it. And it's inside of an invitation style envelope with an actual stamp. So those ballpoint letters are an option as well. And if you've got the budget, they typically will get an even better response than a postcard because they are a little bit more expensive, but it's just like, how can you not open something that looks like that,
And that's what I'm teaching people to do, direct mail for Driving for Dollars. It's typically use an invitation style envelope, handwrite it, and either you do the handwriting if you're early in your career or you hire somebody to do it. But the fact that this is all like done for you, like this is the game changer part. I mean, I just think it's amazing, and that you can start with the Driving for Dollars, and then the rest of it is a system that again leverages your time. And then the other cool part that I want to talk a little bit about before we wrap up is that it has the marketing functions, it has the deal finding functions, but then it also, as you're tracking these deals, like that's another part that's always difficult for me and people I'm teaching, is that you need to follow up with these numbers. Like you've got 100 properties or 100 people call or 20 people call. You then might talk to them, you might have an appointment, you might make an offer. So my understanding is that also behind the scenes, you can take notes, you can track what's happened, almost like a customer management system style. Is that also part of the kind of the idea behind Deal Machine?
Yeah, there's a spot for notes. You can also tag your drivers. You can assign your driver a task to go follow back up with this person or whoever it is, maybe your spouse or partner, or whoever you're working with. That can all be done through the app for you each to manage the tasks that you have to do or the routes you want the driver to cover or your partner to cover. So that's all available in the app as well. When you're on the phone with them, you can open it up and you can type notes from the seller that they may be telling you that are going to be important to remember when it comes time to closing that deal or presenting that offer. So yeah, that's all available inside a Deal Machine as well.
Cool. All right. So I'll have a link. And by the way, and just so everybody knows, I'm now an affiliate with Deal Machine. I reached out, or I think y'all reached out to me, but I was kind of aware of what was going on. But I have a few products that I promote as tools that I think are really helpful. This is one of the ones that I've just said, all right, this is something that people need to check out. If you're brand new and you just have a very tiny budget, maybe this is something you grow into a little bit. You do 1 or 2 deals and then you invest in it. But I just appreciate, David, all y'all have done with the product and what you're going to do. I just think it's going to be very helpful for a lot of people. And I guess that'd be my follow-up kind of wrap-up question in our conversation is, what do you see as, the future for your customers? So like you're watching people every day buying properties, you're helping change kind of the way people invest using technology. Like, things are changing fast out there with the real estate business. Like, so maybe could you talk about what you see 5 or 10 years down the road for us as an investing business and the people, your clients?
It's a great question. 5 to 10 years down the road, we've come a long way in 5 years, I feel like. But as far as Deal Machine's concerned, we know that Driving for Dollars is not the only tool that an investor needs. So we also have something that you can use to build lists. I mean, it's called List Builder, so that if you do, and a lot of investors use multiple types of marketing too. We talk a lot about Driving for Dollars, but a lot of times we see people do both. They'll drive for dollars, but they'll also want to build lists. And so it's helpful if they're doing both of those types of activities that they exist together to eliminate errors in terms of sending the same piece of mail to the same owner twice in a row. And so we want to think about, well, what is an investor doing 5 seconds before or after they're using Deal Machine? And that would be our strategy, is to help bring more of those types of tools in to integrate with the Driving for Dollars tool that we've really focused on so far over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's, you've stuck with what worked and what your original plan was, and then you can build off of that. So I'm excited to see what you add and what the new features will be. I think that'll be very helpful as you keep growing that. So thank you for that. And I do have one other question, actually. This is not Deal Machine related, but I always ask all my interviewees a question about financial independence. So this is a show about achieving financial independence using real estate investing and having lifestyle and doing what matters. And so a lot of people listening to this are going to be at various stages of their career. Maybe they're just starting, maybe they're just kind of starting to build wealth. So do you have any just final financial advice, or, for people who are just getting started or just kind of starting their journey up that mountain of financial independence that would be helpful for them?
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile just to have a goal and be working towards it. When I was saving 50% of all of my income, in my early years, even in college and several years after college, that money for me was always to be kept in my IRA and invested in stocks. So that way they could exponentially grow, and then I could retire probably earlier than the normal age range. Well, then this idea for Deal Machine came upon me when I realized, hey, my two buddies, they just offered to pay $1,000 to try this thing out. Maybe this thing should be, get a little bit more of my focus and time to make this better and help other people do it. Well, we didn't have to fundraise or, pitch it to investors, that would invest in forming a company, because, I had $100K saved up. It was for retirement, but I was able to reallocate it to something more important to me that had come up, and we worked on Deal Machine. I have a business partner. We worked on Deal Machine for 2 years before, I think it was a full 2 years before we actually were able to run payroll and pay ourselves.
Wow.
And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we didn't have the retirement funds that I could draw from. And he had a spouse as well that helped support him during that time. But what I learned was it's really important to have a plan and be working towards that plan, because even if the plan changes, the efforts you put there are probably going to be helpful for whatever you want to change it to. So a lot can change. So be flexible, but have a plan, because you never know how it will come into effect later on that you might appreciate.
Yeah, and those 20 in your 20s, saving that 50% and that plan you had has paid off big, and you're making an impact on a ton of people now. So just congrats to you, David, on what you've built and what you're continuing to build. I'm going to have a link to Deal Machine, and that people can check it out and we have a free trial, I believe, set up there. And but if people wanted to stay in touch with you, do you have any other social media channels, other places they could connect with you, David? And I could put that in the show notes as well.
We do. We've got the Deal Machine YouTube channel, which would be the primary thing I would direct people to. It's going to cover a lot about the app, but also it shows me setting up a PO box, walking into the post office, and doing some other types of things you might be interested in if you're just starting out and just trying to start marketing. That'll be a great resource for you.
Got it. Awesome. I will put those in the show notes. David, this has been great. Enjoyed talking to you. Look forward to staying in touch, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
If you like more details on today's guest or the resources that we discussed, you can find a link to the show notes for today's episode in the podcast description in your podcast player, or in the video description on YouTube. And if you're new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player or on YouTube so you don't miss anything. I have new episodes of the podcast that come out every Monday morning. Everything I've shared with you in this episode has been for general education purposes. I've not considered your specific situation or risk. Before buying your own investments, be sure to consult a financial, real estate, and/or a legal professional. Until next time, I'm Chad Carson. You can also call me Coach, and I'm your host for the Real Estate and Financial Independence Podcast, which is all about helping you invest in real estate, achieve financial independence, and do more of what matters. See you next time.